How do you play Mario games? In Super Mario 64, did you try to collect each and every star, or did you challenge Bowser as soon as you could? In New Super Mario Bros., did you search high and low for star coins or only pick up what you stumbled upon? In Super Mario Bros. 3, did you explore every corner or did you whistle your way to the end? Despite playing the same game, the strategy or mentality one employs can drastically change how a game is enjoyed. Everyone has their own unique way of experiencing Mario. This concept applies to all video games, in fact. Take RPGs for example. Those who fulfill every side quest and search for every item may find the final boss easily overwhelmed, while those who took a more direct approach may have no choice but to utilize every strategy option just to finish. Due to different mentalities, new gameplay options arise which fundamentally alter the experience. This is where speedrunners come in. They play the same games as everyone, but add in one universal qualification: do it as fast as possible. This gameplay mentality is referred to as the Go Fast principle, GFP for short, by me right now for the first time. I just think it sounds nice. GFP, unlike more conventional styles, is rarely accounted for by developers. Even games created with speedrunning in mind eventually take on a character unexpected by its makers. The result is something entirely new. Every speedrun is comprised of a host of tricks and strategies and skills that exist only as a result of the GFP. And they weren't designed by anyone. Discovered by talented runners, yes, but never intentionally created with the player in mind. GFP uncovers a whole new dimension, an accidental world born from the addition of game and fast. And every game's is entirely its own. Let's take a quick look at the speedrun worlds of the most famous video game franchise of all time. Now, I'm probably going to title this video something dumb, like every Mario speedrun ranked or something, but this is more about exploration than value judgment. I'm not ranking them from longest to shortest, and certainly not from best to worst. Every one of these records required incredible skill and dedication, so to say any one is better seems wrong. Rather, I will be ranking them by SSC. If you can't tell, I have a soft spot for unnecessary acronyms. This stands for Shocking Speedrun Coefficient, and it has 4 components. First, I take data from howlongtobeat.com and divide it by the length of the current world record. This returns a rough approximation of how much faster speedrunners go than casual players, and will be referred to as the normie speedrunner ratio, NSR for short, of course. The next 2 metrics are glitch and sequence break. Each run will be assigned a rating from 1 to 5 in each based on how prevalent glitches are in the run and how much of the intended route is skipped respectively. And finally, we'll look at whether the run is the main category for its game. Flagship categories are more likely to be highly optimized, so a yes equals a 1 and a no equals an 0.8. Then we simply multiply each variable together to get the following equation. NSR times G times SB times MC equals SSC. Simple, right? I think this rating illustrates about how impressed and/or confused an average person would be after watching the record video. If my methodology is confusing, that's okay. Stick with me here. Anyway, today we'll look at the main series Mario games, as defined by the only good website on the internet, Mario Wiki. I'm excluding the Mario Maker games for obvious reasons, and Super Mario Run because I totally forgot it exists. I'm also adding in Yoshi's Island and New Super Luigi U to make it around 20 games. These ones. We'll analyze each in chronological order to find the highest and lowest SSCs. Last but not least, today we'll be looking at exclusively any percent speedruns. Every game has multiple categories, but the purest representation of the GFP is this one. Simply beat the game as fast as you can. No other criteria. Without any further ado, let's go. Where it all began. Super Mario Bros. Is consistently one of the most viewed and discussed speedruns on YouTube. Consequently, it may be the one you already know the most about. The record is 4 minutes and 55.746 seconds by TavernWeb, set in August 2019. According to How Long to Beat, the average person takes only 2 hours to beat the game, using warp zones I would assume, giving us an NSR of 24.4. The player is intended to have to play at least these 8 levels in order to beat the game, and lo and behold, so too does the speedrunner. It would appear then that no sequence break occurs at all, but the use of wrong warp glitches in 4-2 and 8-4 to skip portions of each level merits an SB of 1.5. The 1-2 pipe clip, flagpole glitches, bullet bill glitch, and wall jump present a diverse and noticeable display of glitches. Normally this would result in a high G-score, but despite their high degree of importance to the run, they only save 8 seconds over the glitchless category. Time-wise, the majority of the run is still just running and jumping, so I'll award a G of 2. It is the most popular category, so our very first SSC is 73.2. There's not really any context for that yet, so just pretend to be excited. Next on the list is Super Mario Bros. 2. No, not that one, this one. There's a cool story there. Known in the West as Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, this game has nearly identical mechanics to its predecessor. Despite this, the speedrun diverges in strategy more than one might expect. Speedrunner and all-around cool guy Takate achieved a time of 7 minutes and 57.514 seconds in February of 2019. Supposedly, it takes only 3 hours to beat the game casually, although given the dramatic increase in difficulty, I doubt that. Regardless, our NSR is 22.6. Miyamoto was a little less generous this time, requiring 12 levels and none of those can be skipped. From the super jump to the 1-2 wall clip to this snazzy looking trick called Devil's Spell, a few glitches are used which skip small parts of levels, but by far the dominant feature of this run is the platforming. A G and SB of 1.5 each seems fair. SSC of 50.9. The transition from SMB1 to this game does not really require the player to learn anything new, only to simply be better. However, speedrunners don't have it quite as easy. While many skills do transfer, many other tricks and techniques necessary to compete at a high level are totally new, giving Lost Levels a unique flair. Another Super Mario Bros. 2, and this one you probably remember. The any percent record is 8 minutes and 19 seconds, set by the Swedish runner Cool Kid, leading to an NSR of 18. While the earlier two games were centered more or less entirely around precision platforming, this game focused more on creative use of items and picking up enemies to explore levels more complex than seen before. This spirit is carried into the speedrun, as most levels begin with Toad picking up an item or enemy for his speed boost and trying to keep it throughout. In addition to a few one-time use glitches, much of the game's movement is centered around double jumps and vine jumps, unintended techniques which speed things up significantly. Double jumps especially are useful in accessing areas of certain levels early. The winding, non-linear level design, along with the frequent use of sub-areas, is creatively exploited by runners to save large chunks of time. G of 3 here. However, we still play all 10 required levels, although not quite as intended, so only an SB of 2. The final SSC is a 108.2, our highest yet, largely due to the increase in complexity allowing for more complex solutions. Most would tell you this is where Mario hit his stride. The potential shown in its predecessors is realized in Super Mario Bros. 3 completely. With every new world and power-up and minigame, SMB3 brought the NES to its peak. Do we get to see all that in the speedrun? Well, not in any percent. The intended fastest route is to grab warp whistles in 1-3 and 1-4, use them both consecutively to reach World 8, and then— Wait, what? Huh, that doesn't make much sense. Where's he going with this? World 7? Oh, right. It turns out you don't always have to beat Bowser to see the credits. What French runner Kirua is doing is setting up an elaborate, arbitrary code execution glitch. The technicals are beyond me, but check out the video by Retro Game Mechanics Explained. Just know that every little weird thing he does in 7-1 is intentional, all to set up the credits to roll when they probably weren't supposed to, effectively beating the game in only 3 minutes and 4 seconds. NSR a whopping 97.8. The entire run is centered around this glitch, but World 1 is still played pretty normally, and while the ACE is spectacular, the runner still must go through 4 of the 12 intended levels. G and SB of 4. Now, whether or not this is the main category for the game is up for debate. While the player numbers for any percent and any percent no wrong warp are similar, I'll do the responsible thing and let Twitter decide. After the legendary 455 occurred in SMB1, then former world record holder Mitch Flowerpower tweeted this. He wasn't talking about any percent, but rather the category that excludes its signature glitch. That's just enough for me to say it probably isn't seen as the flagship by the community at large, so the final SSC is 1,252. Super Mario Bros. 3 certainly sets a high bar for shocking speedruns. Super Mario Land was simple. As a result of being a launch title on an underpowered console, this game doesn't have a whole lot going on despite its charm. The speedrun, to the untrained eye, would appear that way as well. The game can be beaten in an hour casually, and yet the record is the longest we've seen yet, 12 minutes and 25 seconds by Column Ball. The NSR is a minuscule 4.8. The only noticeable glitch is a screen wrap used for a quick kill in 2-3 and shown off but not required in 4-3 as well. There's no sort of warp zone, so all 12 levels are played and none of the game is really skipped at all. With the G and SB of 1.5 and 1, its SSC is 7.25, nearly 200 times smaller than SMB3's. However, while the record may be less shocking, that does not make it less impressive whatsoever. Take this jump for example. Looks pretty standard, right? Wrong. In order to clear the gap, you have to hold A for only either 1 or 2 frames. If it's held for 2, then Mario must have jumped from the final pixel of the platform. And the whole run is full of situations like this. The simplicity of the game simply does not lend itself to far-fetched looking strategies, but there is still certainly more than meets the eye here. Super Mario World is one of the most iconic games in the franchise, and also one of the most studied. To start off, let's see how record holder Furious finishes off just the first level. That's right, he didn't even finish 1 before warping right to the end. Bowser, we hardly knew you. A 5-hour game destroyed in 41 seconds. NSR of 439. The player is supposed to clear at least 12 levels, including Bowser's Castle, mostly consisting of the first world and the Star World. Furious enters the first level, but never even exits it. A half-level press, if you will. Easily an SB of 5. As for glitches, there isn't anything else. From the second gameplay begins, the glitch is already being set up. G of 5. Like SMB3's credit swap before it, any %2 flies under the radar, having far few runners than the 11 exit category. This is likely due to the insane level of technical knowledge and skill required to even understand what's going on. I sure don't. Drumroll please for the shocking speedrun coefficient. 8,780. SMB3's high mark has already been eclipsed. Is this record unbeatable? Well, if I know one thing about speedrunning. In Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins, you collect 6 golden coins. Surprisingly. But what if you just, I don't know, don't? I hope you're not tired of magically skipping to the credits because Mario speedrunners have a couple more of those up their sleeves. By taking damage or exiting a level at the exact time Mario travels down a pipe, he will clip beneath the start of the next level that he enters. In the opening level, this is used to fall down immediately to the end. In Pumpkin Zone 1, this is used to fall down and down and down until Mario reaches the physical representation of the game's entire memory. Again, I'll cede the explanation to Retro Game Mechanics Explained. After exploring the entire blueprints of his own universe in the form of visual nonsense, there lies a single block which Mario can destroy for the credits to play. German runner Oh Dear has done this faster than anybody with a time of 2 minutes and 42 seconds. None of the golden coins are collected, and only one of the required 25 levels is beaten, and it is done so in a not so straightforward way. 5 and 5 back to back. SSC of 889, 100 times greater than Super Mario Land 1. Super Mario Land 2 was clearly more ambitious than the first Game Boy Mario, introducing an overworld and more complex and creative levels, particularly with regard to their verticality. Similar to SMB2, this turned out to be ripe for exploitation. Once again, complexity correlates with high SSC. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island is maybe not a main series Mario game, but maybe I don't care, we're talking about it anyway because Yoshi is my friend. Now, this game was relatively long. 6 worlds with 8 levels each and no sort of warp zone means it takes casual players 8 hours to beat it. It took a Kasatana 2 minutes and 38 seconds. He played the first level, although with some odd strategies, then starts up the second level and wins? This warp is performed using the tongue glitch, which, and I quote, causes Yoshi's tongue to grow bigger and bigger, eating up the game's memory. Amazing. SB of 5, G of 4.5, since he does do some conventional stuff in 1-1. SSC of 3,281, right in line for a silver medal. It does seem fitting that in a game whose mechanics revolve around eating what it is probably unwise to eat, Yoshi can simply eat the credits trigger. The next game is Super Mario 64. You probably haven't heard of it. Bringing Mario into the third dimension also brought the series into a new frontier of depth. While before you could only run and jump and maybe flutter a bit, now the player can ground pound and long jump and wall kick and triple jump and backflip, and speedrunners bring it all to the table. It's the most popular speed game of all time, and it deserves it. With full control of Mario's movement potential, it feels like there's nothing you can't do. And there hardly is. The player is supposed to collect 70 stars and 2 keys from Bowser, and it's supposed to take at least 13 hours or so. With the special help of backwards long jumping, a technique which allows Mario to build up backwards speed indefinitely due to developer oversight, Japanese runner Kano has beat it with 2 keys but 0 of the stars, and it only took 6 minutes and 39 seconds. However, he didn't just need the BLJs. He also needed every long jump and wall kick and Bowser throw to be pitch perfect. The route is only possible with glitches, but the run is only possible in concert with beautiful, yet still traditional gameplay. G of 3. However, any percent, aka 0 star, is neither the most popular nor prestigious category. This has a lot to do with the difficulty and inconsistency of the BLJ needed to get past both the 30-star door and the Dire Dire Docks loading zone. Final SSC of 1,461. By expanding Mario's arsenal of abilities, SM64 allowed players to reach a higher level of skill than previous games. The GFP further allows players to bring that skill to its absolute peak. Alright, we're about halfway done and this video is already as long as I expected the final cut to be. Let's have a 3-second intermission. Welcome back. Let's keep going with the controversial classic, Super Mario Sunshine. This game brought back nearly every movement option made available in 3D and introduced the fourth dimension, water. Creative use of FLUDD as well as spin jumps make speedruns of this game mesmerizing. However, we are at a bit of a crossroads here. While every previous game has been beaten in under 14 minutes, this one has only been beaten in an hour and 14 minutes and 37 seconds by Ouija. Its NSR is 13.7, the lowest yet aside from the outlier of Super Mario Land. Now, why is that? There are a variety of glitches used cleverly throughout the run. There are some sequence breaks like getting into Pianta Village without the rocket nozzle, or clipping past the annoying puzzles in the casino. But for the most part, everything is sectioned off. You are supposed to collect a bare minimum of 7 shines from each of the game's 7 levels, and besides skipping Bianco Hills Episode 1, there's not much you can do about that. The 2 crown jewels of unintendedness in the run are Gelato Beach Skip, which skips the first 6 shines from that level, and Early Yoshi Go Round, which skips a single shine from Pinna Park. But that's it. Everything else is collected. There is minimal player choice in route, and the barriers to progress are not simply physical like in SM64's castle. The developers really wanted everyone to experience almost everything SMS had to offer, and despite our best efforts, in any percent we still do. With the G and SB of 2, what's left is something entirely new as far as any percent Mario goes. The pressure to be nearly perfect for over an hour straight. This is the main category for SMS speedrunning. SSC of only 54.7. After more than a decade, the DS heralded the return of two-dimensional Mario. New Super Mario Bros. Introduced a slew of new power-ups and included new abilities from the 3D game, such as wall jumps and ground pounds. However, it mostly maintained the simplicity of its spiritual predecessors. You go from the start to the flag, and from World 1 to World 8. If you know where the cannons are, you can skip every level except 3 in Worlds 1 and 5, and all of World 8. Speedrunners do exactly that. SB of 1, though there is some clever use of checkpoints in 8-Tower 2 to speed it up. One of the hallmarks of this run is the use of the blue shell power-up throughout its first half. American runner Glitchman24 needs it to beat the game in 22 minutes and 52 seconds. But he doesn't just need the shell. He needs to maximize it with a variety of techniques, including gaining hyperspeed in 5-3 and gaining a mid-air jump by unmorphing on the exact frame as the input. These nuances are highly important at the level of optimization this game is at, but don't fundamentally change how the game is run. G of 1.5. It's worth noting that the runners use RNG manipulation to collect the shell as soon as possible, which is a cool wrinkle but can't really count towards its SSC, which turns out to be a low 27.6. NSMB1 channeled the spirit of the original 2D games, but did not carry over their exploitable technical flaws. The result is an impressive, straightforward speedrun. If you thought Sunshine was slow, take a look at this. The fastest Super Mario Galaxy has ever been beaten is in 2 hours, 32 minutes, and 25 seconds by Hardcore Gaming. You could beat SMB1 over 30 times in the same amount of time it takes to beat this game once. NSR of only 5.9. But why? The win condition doesn't seem too much more restrictive than SMS's. Just collect 60 stars however you like, with some galaxies locked at first of course, and then beat Bowser. It all has to do with the level design. While previous 3D Mario games threw you into a stage with the singular goal of collecting the star or shine, SMG further segments things. You can't just go directly to the star, you first have to clear planetoid after planetoid, mini-boss and mini-game before you can even see your finish line. This produces some stunning visuals and fun casual gameplay, but when the GFP is active, it can feel restrictive. That said, whenever the game gives Galaxy speedrunners an inch, they take miles, and have come up with some quite creative shortcuts on certain stars. But really, the whole run is somewhat summed up by this little skip. Clever and requiring precision, but ultimately doesn't do that much. The whole game is on rails. Nothing of note can be skipped, aside from a handful of little planets. SB of 1.5. And when a game is so scripted, the only way to go fast is often to break it altogether, but that hasn't happened either. Glitch use is minimal, the most visible being some extra speed gained with the B-suit, which, given the length of the run, doesn't merit above a G of 1. Galaxy's SSC is only 8.9, single digits. This does not mean it's a bad speedrun by any means, it can be spectacular to watch at times, but it is patently unshocking. When considering its design philosophy, and importantly that Mario's movement abilities have been limited, this does seem fitting, to me at least. One last thing to mention, the run I looked at was the any % Mario category. It can actually be faster to play through the game as Luigi, but given that you need to beat the game first to unlock the brother, I see it as more of a New Game Plus category rather than pure any %. New Super Mario Bros. Wii brought 2D Mario back to home consoles, but didn't really change much from its DS predecessor. The route through the game remains mostly the same, World 1 to 5 to 8 to done. This time 5 levels are required in World 5 and a balloon minigame. This is completely unskippable. The record here is 24 minutes and 29 seconds by Fade Vanity, similar NSR to NSMB1 as well. However, while the similarities between the new games are often a point of criticism, what differences there are become defining of their speedrunning worlds. Like the blue shell before it, in this game the propeller suit is depended on. A variety of complex and difficult strategies are made possible with this power-up, one which is unique to the game. This includes the only real glitch, and it's fairly uncertain whether it is one, Bombless. With the propeller suit and extreme precision, a quick kill is possible on Bowser Jr. here. Given how optimized this game has become, Bombless is essential to the run. Beyond that, using the propeller to fly by what was intended to be an auto-scroller is cool, but not really a sequence break in my opinion. G of 1.5, SB of 1, SSC of 33.1. The game may not be broken, but every single tool possible is used to its full extent, and the margins of error are razor thin. Pretty damn impressive. And here it is, the longest Mario speedrun of them all, Super Mario Galaxy 2. The record is 3 hours and 23 seconds by Nemi. The reason for its length is similar to Galaxy 1 in that most of its levels are linear in nature, and this game further compartmentalizes by dividing everything into worlds just like a 2D game. Furthermore, you need 70 stars instead of 60 to access the final level. Player choice is fairly limited, although the route implemented in the speedrun is quite clever nonetheless. The result is an NSR of only 4.32, the lowest in the whole series. The whole Wii era came with a penchant for linearity from Nintendo, and this is represented in the speedruns as well. For example, before it was recently broken, the speedrun for Skyward Sword was nearly 5 hours and the longest in the Zelda series. Even after thorough application of the GFP, the choices developers make tend to remain relevant. It's worth noting that with runs as long as this, runners not only need skill and focus, but also endurance. To run even the shortest category of SMG2, you need to be able to sit down, play for 3 hours straight, and hardly blink. Not easy. But there is more to the story of this run. Quick, what do you remember changed in Galaxy 2? Rosalina was replaced by this thing. You can be a cloud. Yoshi was there. Well, Lubba doesn't really interact with the speedrun much besides endlessly telling us what we already know, but the Cloud Flower and Yoshi certainly do. Yoshi has a glitchy quality of being able to flutter indefinitely if Mario crouches on its back, and Cloud Mario can get some crazy height on his jumps that looks very unintended. These two things, along with some other exploitation of the gravity and momentum, produce some very cool shortcuts. G of 2. SB of only 1.5 however, because 71 stars are still collected in the end. Despite its lower NSR, Galaxy 2 has a higher SSC than Galaxy 1, 13. Just a bit more shock sprinkled in. Super Mario 3D Land was the first 3D Mario game on handheld, and it was structured more like a traditional 2D experience. There are 8 worlds, each with 6 or so levels. A few levels are optional, and a few more can be skipped with warp pipes, but for the most part, your path is predetermined. Straight line from Peach's Castle to Bowser's. The future former world record is 54 minutes and 51 seconds by Zelda Cubed, and with a 7-hour casual playthrough, the NSR is 7.7, as low as you would expect given the game's linearity. There is another dimension to speedrunning Super Mario 3D Land, however, and I don't just mean the third. You need 50 star medals to access the World 5 castle and 100 to access the final level. This means that instead of just going from the start to the flagpole, the runner needs to zigzag across, collecting as many medals as possible while sacrificing as little time. This results in some cool looking movement, thanks also in large part to the Super Leaf. In its return for the first time since the NES, Tanuki Mario is the default state in this run, allowing for a level of speed tailless Mario could only dream of. This continues a trend in modern Mario games where the speedrun becomes defined by its flagship and arguably gimmicky power-up. As far as glitches go, there's nothing really to speak of. However, there is one major quasi-sequence break. If you die 10 times in a level, the game will gift you a P-Wing, which just skips the whole level for you. It turns out to be faster to do this on the very last level than to play the whole thing through.
And it's actually faster, and it's really lame.
But also very clever. SB of 1.5. 3D Land's SSC is 11.5. New Super Mario Bros. 2 didn't bring a whole lot new to the table. It stuck with what has made past Mario games successful, and it did so quite well, but when the biggest new addition is, while there's a lot of coins, the new gameplay potential isn't exactly revolutionary. The result is a very straightforward, some may say pure, speedrun. The record is 26 minutes and 8 seconds by J-Dude, and it is almost flawless. There are no immediately noticeable mistakes, and he is only 2 seconds off his sum of best segments. Unlike other new Super Mario speedruns, this one doesn't utilize some shiny new item. It uses the Fire Flower and the Super Leaf, possibly the 2 most iconic power-ups in the whole franchise. Beyond that, he just goes fast. Really fast. In a way anyone can appreciate. That said, his speed is made possible due to a glitch called dash flying. If you press the dash and jump buttons at the same time while flying with the leaf, Mario can maintain running speed in the air when it's normally impossible. G of 2. No sequence breaks though. SSC lands at 25.3. The general lack of brokenness and esoteric tricks in the run means you can really notice that this dude is good as hell at Mario. Unbeknownst to many, Nintendo released a console between the Wii and the Switch. I can't remember what it's called, but it did have its own 2D Mario. New Super Mario Bros. U. Its world record is 37 minutes and 24 seconds by Dutch runner Mitch. The quickest route through the game involves doing portions of 4 different worlds, with no shortcut in World 8, and some long autoscrollers, which is why it's longer than the other new games. Utilizing the fresh new Acorn suit to its full potential allows for some cool skips within levels, including some crazy stuff with the elevator in the penultimate level. This seems kinda glitchy to me, but I'm not really sure. Ultimately though, this game is simply the next iteration of a formula polished but very safe. This safety, this lack of risk and experimentation has resulted in speedrunners not really being able to crack it. NSMBU remains played for the most part how it was supposed to be. NSR and SSC equal at 15.2. New Super Luigi U is Mario minus Mario. The character himself is not present, but the game still plays just like a Mario game, so I think it's fair to count it. As a follow-up to NSMBU, it retains the same world map, but the gameplay is surprisingly unique. Every level has a much shorter time limit, and the level layout is changed to be much more challenging, filled to the brim with enemies and pits. It's been beaten in 26 minutes and 10 seconds by the Australian runner Latchers, shaving over 10 minutes off the previous game. However, this spike in difficulty is somewhat offset by the ability to play as this weird little guy, Nabbit. He can't use items aside from the star, but he also does not take damage from most enemies. Therefore, this run has an interesting layer of decision making. When to use Luigi for the utility of the Acorn suit, and when it's better to use Nabbit for a safer path. NSLU mixed up the new formula more than any other, but because it was built within the boundaries of another game, these changes have not really led to any unintended exploitation. G and SB remain at 1, and the SSC is 10.3, lower than NSMBU's due to its shorter casual playthrough. Have you ever wondered, what if Mario was a cat? Well, someone did, because Super Mario 3D World exists. And if you want to see the catsuit used to its full potential, then the speedrun is the place to go. Through clever combination of jumps, dives, and cat attacks, runners can exploit the momentum system to go far faster than intended. This helped Spanish runner King Boo complete the game in 1 hour and 38 minutes and 43 seconds. The run is still pretty long because Nintendo was a lot less generous with warp pipes, only allowing the player to skip parts of World 1 and 4, and once again the route from world to world is so cleanly segmented that no big skips have been found. But within the levels themselves, it's a whole different story. To say the catsuit lets you cut corners is an understatement. The combination of the momentum exploits and Peach's floatability allows you to flutter across huge gaps without breaking a sweat, and this isn't a rarity. It's almost every level, aside from a few where Luigi's higher jumps or Toad's faster top speed is more useful. Ironically, Mario is left in the dust this run. Similar to 3D Land, you need collectibles to unlock certain levels. In this game, it's 170 green stars to be precise, so you can't just cut corners straight to the end, but rather you have to jump from corner to corner to corner, picking up over 1 star per minute. This need for green stars is also the impetus for a sequence break. By jumping on top of the pipe in the final world, you can fall down and down to a 10-star minigame that would normally be inaccessible. Finally, do you remember that climactic fight with Meowser? The one that people constantly try to recreate in Mario Maker 2. Well, most of that is skipped as well, in the coolest example of all the movement exploits that this run has to offer. All things said and done, 3D World has a G of 2 and an SB of 1.5. The final SSC is 19.2 for this wild ride of a speedrun. Well, we've made it to the end. The 20th and most recent main series Mario game. Super Mario Odyssey's speedrun is worth the wait. The current record is 59 minutes and 14 seconds by Mitch, the same guy who holds the NSMBU record. Before I go on, I should mention that this is the one-player record. Cappy has much greater mobility in 2-player mode, where the record is 59 minutes and 6 seconds by Arolme and Parasite, but most don't view it as the premier any percent category. In the less than 2 years since its release, it has already become the second most popular speed game of all time. Its NSR is 12.6, the highest we've seen in a 3D game since Sunshine. When looking at the level design, it's no wonder why. Most of the kingdoms are wide open, with moons hidden in every nook and cranny, and the game only requires a certain number to progress. Which moons you collect is entirely up to you, and the game gives you what feels like infinite options. On top of this rediscovered freedom are the new movement abilities Mario gained. Rolling lends high horizontal speed, and bouncing off of Cappy allows you to reach heights that don't seem possible. And then there are the captures. You're not just Mario in this run, you're a frog, a T-Rex, a bullet bill, a fish, an onion, a Goombas, a giant slab of meat, and even Bowser himself. The depth to this speedrun is incredible, and I've only mentioned the intended mechanics. There's some difficult out-of-bound tricks, and one of the most creative exploits I've ever seen. By setting the console's timer to right before daylight savings time, a time-based event triggers early, allowing the runner to grab this moon without waiting. Enough for a G of 2. As for sequence breaks, the entirety of the lengthy moon cave sequence is skipped with some well-timed wall jumps, and many individual moons are collected before they were supposed to be accessible. SB of 2. Our final shocking speedrun coefficient is 50.7. Where does that stand exactly? Let's review. So, here is our final table. Super Mario World ended up taking the prize as the most shocking Mario speedrun of all time. Super Mario Land is the least. Now, the first thing to notice is how huge of a range this represents, from 8,780 to 7. And I suppose this is inevitable when every part of the equation positively correlates with every other, but I think it also demonstrates the high degree of variety speedrunning brings to the table, even within a single franchise, and even within a franchise often criticized for its games being too similar. There is something for everyone. If you enjoy runs that shatter the game beyond recognition, there's Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island and Super Mario Land 2. If you enjoy runs that are more straightforward and faithful to the intentions of the developers, there's Super Mario Land and Super Mario Galaxy and New Super Mario Bros. Somewhere in the middle there's Odyssey and Sunshine. And the coolest part, I think, is that these different characters generally represent the feeling of playing the game for the first time. The linear and simple games usually remain so, while the complex and challenging only ramp it up. Each unique mechanic and item and world contributes to what makes each speedrun tick. And this is just any percent. Every one of these games has multiple categories which can be a different beast altogether. There's 1,000 worlds waiting to be explored, limited only by our creativity. What I've shown here only scratches the surface. To speedrun Mario is not to devalue or disrespect it, but rather to extend its capacity for challenge and fun beyond what anyone thought possible. The GFP can turn a game into a universe. But something's not quite sitting right with the numbers. Take a look at this graph of the SSCs. There's some notable outliers, one could say. Now, SSC is a made-up metric that ultimately doesn't mean that much, but there could still be something to learn here. I mentioned that every variable is positively correlated with every other, but that's not quite true. Whether or not any percent is the main category didn't come up too much, but it was part of the equation. And when you look at the highest numbers, a pattern is obvious. After a certain point, the speedruns become too shocking, and people prefer to play other categories. I mean, when you play Mario World, do you want to painstakingly set up a credits warp, or do you want to fly through the air? This begs the question, how glitched is too glitched? That is the topic for my next video. If you want to hear my take on it, hit the big red button. Or you could leave a comment telling me how pointless this all is. Both are fine. I've been Skyhoppers. See you next time. Hi again, just want to take another moment to emphasize that every single speedrun I've shown off takes a huge amount of skill. No one is inherently better, they just have different characters. I've linked the YouTube videos of all the runs in the description. I highly recommend that you watch any that caught your eye and follow the runners on Twitch. This was my first attempt making a video and I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or on Twitch if you want to see runs on the mediocre side. I also set up a Discord for anyone who wants to say I'm wrong about everything, and I'm sure I was wrong about some things. I'm by no means an expert on most of these games, so if you think one or another deserves a higher or lower SSC or something like that, I would really love to hear your opinion. Alright, I think that's everything. Let's hope no one beats a record in the time it takes to upload. Peace.